who are you and why do we care?
Hey guys, thank you for having me. First, thank you for the invitation. My name is Juan Garcia. I am the director of rackets at San Deguito Tennis Club in Encinitas. Encinitas is a little surf town north of San Diego, California. San Deguito is a 9 court, hard court tennis club, member owned. We have a couple pickleball courts. One of them used to be a pool, and we've made that transition, and that made me director of rackets. I used to be director of tennis. Um, so I came from another local club, head professional there at the Bay Club. It's a California based franchise. So you guys from Georgia get a little information on these clubs. It's about 14, 17 clubs. I'm not sure how many they've bought out, but it's a pretty good athletic club. One of the clubs that has a gym and a pretty big facility, pools, all the whole shebang. It's pretty nice club. I am originally from Mexico, California border. So it's Baja, Mexicali. And then on the other side, it's Calexico. They were very original when they thought about names there. They made it easy on everybody, Calexico and Mexicali. So I grew up in the Mexican side, and I started going to U.S. school in Calexico in seventh grade and on. And my plan, or my parents' plan, was to get me the tools to get to a place where I could go and get a scholarship playing tennis. And my idea about that was like, well, I want to play baseball. So I played both growing up and playing high school. I actually went back to Mexico to a university, and I played a year of baseball there. Being the rebellious me, I wanted to do my thing. And I came back to tennis through, a passion, and I loved competing individually, and also playing in a team environment for a college was also a pretty fun experience. So that said, that took me, a few years out of tennis, and I explored different jobs, different opportunities, which I noticed that I really missed tennis. So I came back to the sport. I started doing a few lessons. I wanted to share, the beginning was someone suggested that I should do an ad on Craigslist. Does everybody know the Craigslist? So I posted an ad for tennis lessons, and my first client called me, and I'm like, "Oh, you want a lesson? No, I want to let you know that you missed the last number. You didn't put the right information." So I had a only, area code and then 6 numbers. So he was letting me know, but he was actually interested in lessons. So he became a client, and I corrected that. I was kind of notorious. I did that once before, and I only gave to the last digit. They had to figure it out. So then I started teaching a little bit at the complex where I was living. And there was a guy that had the kind of like the lease or the access to the courts. And he said, you got to teach under insurance, and you got to get certified, and you got to do the due diligence of getting, all these things in line. And another confession is I asked around what's going on, and well, the USPTA, and I show up to the certification, and I'm like, hey, I'm here to get certified. We don't have you on the list. I was like, well, what do? You got to sign up. And I was like, another obstacle of something that I kind of like fumbled around, and it set me up to get to another city to get certified. And then from there on, I started getting my client base, and I started building up from there. So been certified for 18 years now, and really enjoying teaching, and really enjoying the aspects of what I've learned throughout these years. And this is where I am today. I'm sitting here doing some exploring, getting out and getting a little out of my comfort zone to talk to you guys and see what ideas what insights we can share, and we can try to make things better for tennis.
And Bobby, he said baseball. So this is where I take a step back and I let Bobby start going because he's
I
going to want to ask baseball questions here.
gotta know right away, what position did you play?
I loved playing the outfield. So I played center field in high school. I pitched a little bit, and I was always very curious about other positions. I was kind of like a leadership position with the team where I was one of the, better athletes. And the coach he was a former AAA player in the minors, and he played at team that my grandmother's brother owned. So I kind of had a little way to get him to, do what I asked. So I tried catching. I was a catcher for a little bit, and I really liked the way that the catching worked because I could see things that you couldn't see from the other side, and I could move the players around. And I played right field in college that one year that I played, and I bat anywhere from, probably third through seventh, depending on my hot streaks.
But you proved my point that early on, because when I get that question, 'cause I played as well, and I always ask the people what position, and if they tell me they love to play like first base, I'm like, you're a baseball player because you're a hitter. But when you tell me you pitched, you played center field, and you caught, you tell me you're a tennis player because you need to be involved in everything. With me, it told me I was ADD, that if I was not constantly involved, then I could drift off. So, but yes, you fit my profile. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I always enjoy the baseball connection because Bobby was also a baseball player, and I appreciate the advice that Bobby was given. If I can steal your story a little bit about, baseball's your sport, but I think it was your master's program that they said, all right, great,
Yes.
go into anything but baseball in business.
Don't do your passion. Do make sure you remember it's a business. Yes.
Right. And I think that's one of the things Juan and I we agree on a little bit is we want to bring in that outside view into the tennis world. We want to start sharing more business acumen rather than just tennis has done it this way for thousands of years. Well, now we are racket sports. Bobby, by the way, we need to change your title at some point, right? Because you got pickleball courts now, so you're now you could be director of rackets.
I am director of racket sport. I just need to update the profile. Yes, but
Okay.
yes, I am a
It's just not
director of
public yet.
racket sports
Well,
now.
you are now.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yes.
congratulations. I'll be
Thank you.
that's
I
Do
almost
you
Can't
get a
wait to put
raise?
that on my resume.
I almost gave it up. I almost gave it up because they were like, "Well, now you got to get new business cards, and now you got to do the update all your, social media and all the platforms." And I'm like, "Can I take it back? Can I be
Yeah, I don't
director
have
of?"
time for that.
And I had to
Exactly.
go in and order new cards and everything. But it was, it's an evolution of parts that we got to keep moving forward. And if that's something that, retroactively we were already director of rackets, it's the time that we got to make that adjustment. So it's pretty interesting that, sometimes you're like, well, I was doing it already, but now it's official, right? When you change everything.
Yeah, and
I
those
look
little
forward to
changes take time.
the day when one of us gets hired as a general manager. That's when we'll really take that next, when they realize that we might be able to have a brain. Just don't go to the golf director for the next level. We could do it as well. We're managing people. We
Right.
understand.
100%. And that's more for the brains, less for the brawn. That's when you start getting exposed to you're going to lead in a different way than some lessons and some admin and manage the pros. You're now really, really taking over the facility, and everybody has to report and you're really in charge. So that's almost scary responsibility, right? But that's why we start early on and we keep getting educated because you got to be prepared. When the opportunity knocks, you got to open the door and say, "Hey, I'm ready." So I would encourage you guys to, start thinking of yourselves as also a prospective GM somewhere at your club, or taking those opportunities as they come.
And I'll bet not enough tennis coach types, rackets professionals, I'll say, put in their resume for things like that. Just historically, it hasn't really been available to the tennis side. Usually your golf pro if there's a promotion or they're going to bring in someone with some GM experience because there aren't a lot of clubs that want to take a shot at someone who's never been a GM before, but there's also limited people with manager experience. So I agree with Juan. I think suggesting if you're out there and you're thinking, hey, you know what, what's my next gig? It doesn't mean just because tennis pros don't typically get that interview, go ahead and put your hat in the ring. I think that's great. So, Juan, the next question we have is about uniqueness. And I don't know how a Mexican born former baseball player, tennis coach in San Diego is extremely unique, but what do you, what do you have? You also said you've got some military experience. So, what's the uniqueness about the brand that is Juan Garcia in California?
Yeah, the military part, a lot of people don't really know about it. I'm not someone that's, going back in time and trying to bring back like, oh, you know what I've done and where I've been. It actually shows in actions and discipline, and everybody knows or that knows me know that I spent, at least 4 or 5 days a week at the gym, and I go to the early class because I would never make it later on. I get, pulled in every direction and I couldn't make it. So I'm in a 6:15 class at the gym 4 or 5 days a week. I try to encourage all my clients and friends and people that surround, me and my community to, get some fitness and get some nutrition and get some all the things that are going to get the body and the mind in line to keep getting better. So my motto is get better every day. I think that, we were done at 9 a.m. We'd already done more than a lot of people have, you know, done or they would do in the whole day when I was in the military. And you guys are from Georgia. I actually have a little story to tell. I've been there at paratrooper school in Fort Benning, Georgia. And I don't know if I'm going to hurt anybody's feelings here, but when the drop zone, they were teaching us how to jump out of airplanes. And there was a drop zone that they were like, if you end up drifting a little too far west, you're going to end up in Alabama, and don't let Billy Bob drag you out with them. You better run back to us. And they would tell us that just as a joke, but we were like, well, where is Alabama? I wasn't familiar with the area. So that was just a cool experience that I had. It was in August, late August, early September. So you know that I know what your guys' summer weather is all about. I keep talking about this, every now and then. I'm like, I've experienced real humid conditions. I was there for 3 weeks and the categories of the heat were like super high. They didn't really let us run everywhere as we should. But one of one of the jumps I ended up taking a little bit of wind, and I ended up my first jump, I think it was, or maybe the second one, I ended up hanging on a tree. So I got some stories to tell of my experience in Georgia, Fort Benning. That was a fun, long time ago, 25 years ago, I want to say.
It's fantastic. Bobby, have you jumped out of an airplane?
I have not.
I cannot recommend it enough.
Really?
It's
I
such an
cannot. It is
adrenaline
an
rush.
amazing experience. Now, I haven't done it. Military, different thing. Like practicing to be able to do it for that purpose is one thing. Me just doing it for fun is probably just considered reckless, but it is absolutely phenomenal. And I very much enjoyed it. Thankfully, did not get caught in a tree. That was not part of my experience. But we've also worked with one of our other American Racket Sports Association members, Warren Robinson, is Navy. So he's got military as well in his blood. And you talk about the discipline, there's something about that changes a person. Do you agree?
Definitely. It ingrains in something that you can never really get rid of it, right? It's like something that you're going to take on forever and ever. You've endured some really harsh conditions that it's almost like a marathon runner. What are you going to tell a marathon runner about, you know, hard conditions when they've put themselves through 26 miles nonstop, So we got up super early in the morning and went running, and it wasn't a decision. It was like we had no choice, right? I signed up. I actually volunteered. Both my parents are American born, and they were encouraging me to make a decision. I was back and forth. I went to college. I came back to the university in Mexico, and I was living back at home. And they were like, "Why don't you take a year or a summer and or you could also follow." There was a cousin of mine that was also a paratrooper, and he was doing really well in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I ended up getting my duty station. And I said, I'll go in the military. I thought it was like, I'm 20, I want to do that. And they were shocked. They were like, no, but if you want it, then I'm like, no, no, I like that idea. And they kind of took a moment and they were like, oh, I think he's decided, he's determined to do it. And I went in the recruiter's office and it was just from there, Fort Jackson, I went to somewhere, Fort Lee, Virginia. I was all over pretty much on the South. I was stationed in North Carolina. We did Fort Polk, Louisiana. So I got to find a lot of unique things about that area. They were talking about eating deer, and I'm like, what does it taste like? And they were talking about things that I grew up in an area where it was different. So what makes me unique is that little background, that background that I have. Um, as far as my coaching, I empathize. I try to connect with my clients. In hindsight, I heard about this story not too long ago, and they said it's easier to make your clients friends than to make friends your clients. So I've been making my clients friends. So I have long term. I mean, I'm 48 right now, and I have clients that I've been coaching for a little on and off. They've had time off, but we're on 13 years. We kind of measure on my dog's age because he's 13, and it was like, you didn't have your dog back then. And I'm like, well, it's more than 13 years. So a lot of that we go through, some kind of a gauge. And oh, you didn't have your son. I'm like, well, we've been working for longer than 10 years. You just had your son, so less than, 9 years. So there's a lot of those. We've built connections. Most of my clients, we've been going for years and years. And some would say, well, they probably pretty good. I'm like, well, they haven't gotten worse. So that's a that's a measuring stick, right? A lot of us are getting older. I don't know anybody that's not. So if you're staying at the same level, it's an advantage. I empathize with them. I try to connect. I try to relate, through stories. And look, this is happening with someone else that I'm coaching. A lot of my higher level 4-5 guys, maybe 5 O's, I try to relate to the times that I went through some type of a challenge that I can help them through what they're feeling, right? It's like, oh, I feel like this change, changing of a grip or a stance or moving through the ball or something that they have to change in their game. I said, look, I had that challenge, 15 years ago. I remember exactly where I was in my life. And it took me about 6 months, maybe a year. And they realized that I'm talking about experience. I've been there and I've done that. And it's easy for them to tag along and say, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna, you know, I say, look, I've done it. Now I tell you, the shortcut is there, but now you got to do the work. And nothing different than I did it. You can do it. So a lot of these stories lead to, I feel, that makes me somewhat unique. Maybe some other coaches, good for them, that are trying to connect with their clients, trying to motivate them through past experiences or some type of a story that would help them realize their potential easier.
Bobby, it makes me think of Aesop's fables. Now I've got a 3-year-old and Bobby's got a grandson a similar age. And being able to share that kind of information without saying, well, here's what you should do. Being able to say a quick story that says, here's what a little chicken did in a similar situation. Somehow, maybe that's the kid version, right, Bobby? What's the way? Because RSPA and our certifying bodies say we shouldn't talk too much, but we do need to get these things imparted.
You most definitely do, because that's how you build trust. I mean, it always amazes me when you see a player go through 5 coaches in 5 years. Well, we have a big problem there, because a relationship is based on trust. And if you're not putting the hours in, then how are you ever going to develop the trust? It's unfortunate, it's society that we've gone in that direction where there's something better, so let's drop it. But the bad part is, if you don't go through the bad with somebody, you can never fully understand the good and the great. And I think we see that on every level in society right now. And I'm not going to say poor Coco, who's going to go through another coach here pretty soon, but this is the type of thing. At some point, either you grab the person by the neck and say, "Hey, you're blowing it, kid. You guys are all way too old." But Sugar Ray Leonard, his trainer was Muhammad Ali's trainer, Angelo Dundee, and he was fighting Thomas Hearns. And literally in the 13th round, he looked at Sugar Ray Leonard and said, "You're blowing it, son." And Sugar Ray Leonard went out there next 3 rounds and knocked out Tommy Hearns. But that you can't do that unless you have somebody's utmost trust and faith. And that's what makes a relationship great, and that's what made Sugar Ray and Angelo so good together.
I like that. And one, you mentioned having kids or at least a son. There's a familial trust. My stepdaughter said the other day on the call, she was sitting here and she says, "Well, I want you in the room, Mom, because I can be mean to you and you still have to love me." But it was just an interesting statement. She wasn't saying that she likes being mean to her mother, but she's about to have a child and we're going to be grandparents and we're talking through all those things. But it's that trust that says, I'd rather my mom in the room with me than my mother-in-law. It's like, well, no, because I have to treat her in a different way. Maybe there's a connection here that says, yeah, we can't always, like a parent, to be able to say, "You're blowing it, kid," when that kid is my boss and she's 20 years old and she's going to fire me because she didn't make the quarters. Like, there's this strange way to do it within the collection that is client, athlete, and coach relationship. Juan, how do you play through those in your world?
I actually have a daughter too, and a lot of the things is, as parents, it's a little different, but you gotta tell them, hey, look, I've done that. If you're trying to discipline a child, what are you gonna tell them that you've done the same things, right? But you give them the authority or the obligation that they have to self correct. And it's the same thing when you're in the court. You have to establish this connection with your client first before you start correcting and changing and doing these things that you're trying to get them to trust you first. And I've actually worked on, I'm finishing a book, The Modern Tennis Coach, and it's about these ideas that you have to first cultivate a connection so that the client can trust you, so that then they open up and they're really dropping that guard and being open to all the suggestions and all the ideas that you're going to give them about how to improve, right? And it's about being relatable. A lot of the times when you tell them, I used to be when we were growing up, and when no, it's like, hey, when I was an up and coming pro, there was one of my mentors here in town. He told me these things. He was like, when I was an up and coming pro, I used to go to the conferences, and this other coach mentored me into joining the district board and getting on the diversity and inclusion committee. And you kind of draw them a vision or that path that they can also go through, instead of telling them, you got to do this. When I used to be, how many times have we heard that? When I was your age, when we were younger, right? Oh, I walked 5 miles round trip to get to the grocery store. How many of this people don't, they can't see themselves doing that, not lived in that situation, and the situation is different. But how can you make them visualize, like, based on my situation, how can I improve? Right. So it's dropping these seeds and planting, water it every day and let them figure it out without really pushing that envelope.
Yeah, and I don't envy the coaches these days in that world because it really is tough to tell somebody else's kid what they need to be doing and be able to cultivate those relationships. Some people are lucky they have a club and they get to be there and that's where the members come to them. Bobby has an inherent trust even with a new member where they come in and they go, "Okay, you're my coach." Because he's been there, what, 13 years now, something like that now, Bobby?
Yep.
And he's built the trust around others at some level, and you want in the same way of being at your club for a while, but not everybody has that, where maybe it's just my first day and I've got to get to know somebody, but you want to make changes fast. It's difficult from a coaching perspective. We all know how to coach. We all have our ideas on the best ways to do it. And the question here is, all right, are we doing it to the best of our ability, but can we also be better? I like your phrase, Juan, trying to be a little bit better every day. I think that makes me think of one of the Jensens who always said moving the needle. I think it was Luke, always talked about just moving the needle a little bit, piece by piece, and hearing the different coaching styles. We all have all the information that's out there, whether it's RSPA, PTR, whoever we're learning from, whoever trained us to be a coach, whoever's now helping us run a good business. We want to then be the mentor to the next up and coming without saying too much of my life was hard, kid, you got it easy. You're right. That doesn't create any connection. That's actually generating separation and to
Right.
create how different things are. That's got to be tough. Juan, what else is on your mind? You and I have been talking a lot recently about what's going on in California and changes and how things are. Your view of the industry these days. You got anything big and exciting on your mind that you want to talk about?
Yeah, definitely. I want to close that last question with kind of opening the next one with the idea that you got to make a change that's enough significance that it'll improve everything, right? So what change am I going to do at my club, or what am I going to build that would make the biggest impact? And building a good culture, I feel like I've developed the connection and the trust with the members that they kind of open the door for me to try to make some changes that they really enjoy, or they really see a difference, or they really the trust that it brings, right? When I make a decision, or when I ask for the board to do something, they know it comes from a place that I'm meaning the best for the club, that I've, through the experience. It was my first time as a director there, and I've learned a lot throughout the 7 years that I've been there. So now when we sit in a meeting, I'm kind of leading my way in shaping the future of the club with the trust that they've seen the changes, and they've seen the culture go through these evolutions and transitions, right? When they feel that everybody's feedback, a lot of the times, how many times have you bought an appliance, for an example, a little out of sorts, but and how many bad reviews did that appliance have? It's like you buy a refrigerator and everybody goes online and posts bad feedback, right? Oh, this refrigerator, but nobody really goes and tells the good stories. My refrigerator, it's an expectation, right? It's an expectation that people have that everything is going to work well. So if the negative feedback is minimal, and they open up and they say, well, there is very positive feedback, it really, you know, tells the story, right? So what I wanted to talk about today was about the leadership in our industry. And I'm not talking about pointing fingers upwards, but I'm talking about extending a hand to the up and coming generation, and enabling them to understand that they are leaders. They don't need a title. They don't need, to go through a course. They don't need to be a head pro. They're leading a club, a clinic, or they're leading a junior program. They're leading, whether it's one lesson at a time, they're a leader. They're already people following them. So this is where I really wanted to get out and start sharing these insights and ideas, because I did a workshop at the club not too long ago, last week or two. And I said, hey, let me get a show of hands of who's a leader in this group. And I had mine up. I'm the director of Rackets, and they're working in the junior program. And I wanted to say, I'm honest. I am the leader here. And nobody raised their hand. And I kind of started exploring, like, what's going on. And one of them raised their hand. He was a little older of the group. And I'm like, do you want to share what makes you a leader? And he said, well, I have a group of juniors that I lead. And then I saw the other hand start. I'm next. I want to share my perspective of why I'm a leader. I'm like, everybody wants to raise their hand now. I'm like, yeah, give me why are you a leader? "Well, I don't like these problems, and I like to be organized, and you're a leader." And I'm like, next, you're raising your hand now, right? Yeah. And I'm like, guys, you should, as soon as you park, as soon as you get out of the car, you're a leader, and you're going to treat this employment or this situation everywhere you go, you are going to handle and lead yourself as a leader. So I think that this is like, oh, you got to do, your part. we all have to do, but we got to tell these guys how. So it's not like we were going back on that story. It's not, don't tell them what to do. It's enable them to understand that they are a leader, that they are already some in a place of some authority, that they are in a leading position, right? Whatever it is. And then they can start exploring, well, how can I be a better leader? So get a little education, do some specialty courses, take the routes they're already certified or they're trying to get certified. And I just, point them in the right direction, whatever it is. You mentioned RSPA, PTR. I think USTA is coming up with some type of a coaching pathway. I personally went the RSPA USPTA in 2008. Everybody that I asked was already there. So it was a natural gravitation to that organization. I'm very, very, thankful that I took that. I could have gone PTR and I would have been probably in the same place. I'm naturally like I'm wanting to open up a little more of my story and let people know, where I've been through or what I've been through. And what I want to see in the industry is that more people take these initiatives to become a better everyday guy, or woman. And that's what's going to make the industry better. So this is kind of like my time that I wanted to, when I go to a conference and I go to the lesson and I'm like, so what did you think about? And they have some story that they were so, moved and they got, and I'm like, oh, I wish I had a camera here so that everybody could hear about this. But it ends in that one lesson. So now it's like, how do I get these stories and how do I motivate more coaches or more people to step up to these leading positions and make themselves better every day?
It makes me think of be the change, right, Bobby? So, but in this case, it's be the leader. If we often look up and say, oh, they're doing it wrong. Well, who are they? And in this case, at some point, it sounds like Juan wants us, whoever we don't picture ourselves as they, that are the leaders, to be the leaders that we want to see in the world. Do you picture it that way, like I do, Bobby?
I do hold up, you know, a little bit of responsibility because unfortunately they set the culture and we're coming into the culture. And yes, we can change it, but change takes time. And my thing is with every other industry, it's I think where we need to spend a lot more time is mentoring. You get somebody young in, like I don't want to tell anybody. I want them to be next to me. It's like my child. I want my child with me every day because I don't want to tell her. I want her to see it. I want her to see me say please. I want her to see me say thank you. I want her to understand humility without me having to say that's not proper behavior. I want her to see it constantly. And unfortunately, I just think we don't have enough of that. The other side, and I even laughed, going back to when Juan's talking about, as coaches, and I started thinking about as a baseball coach, one of the things I prided myself on when I was coaching baseball is that I always got my kids, whether they were good, bad, or indifferent, on game day, they always played their best because they were relaxed, because they knew I had their back. And I think about my dad and what I say about my dad being my best coach in every sport that I was better than him at because his job was to protect me and to make my life easy. So inside the baseball field, inside the tennis court, that was my domain. He had everything else covered. I don't know, the nature of our sport doesn't because we're not sitting next to even like with boxing, it's an individual sport, but the trainer still gets in the ring with him every 3 minutes. We don't have that contact during the fight, during the battle. So we can't sit there and instill our passion and what we would do, or just say, hey, you're giving it everything else. Let's keep going, keep going. And then interject where, you're close, but you got to step it up a little bit. It's hard, and I think it's obvious in our sport because so few people actually win. You get the same 4 or 5 people who figured it out, which is the same as hitting a forehand. You have to figure out how to win, and that's an invaluable lesson, obviously, and not a lot of people can get that far. And, I mean, these are the things that we started the podcast about is to just see change, get enough voices. And I'll leave it at this. What I would love to see, it goes back to let's get 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 people, a million more people playing tennis, because that means we diversified. And that means we have a lot of different backgrounds coming to the table to discuss different ways to get there. And I think that's the other problem too with tennis. It's not everybody doesn't have access to it. I mean, George is unique as it comes, right? Because we have league tennis that is so dominated by adults, they try to get their kids into it, but their idea of success, unfortunately, is different because they started at 30 and they made it to an A level or a B level. Hey, I did great. As a kid, if you're starting, there's that urgency because I got to get a scholarship or I want to be a ranked player. I want to, we don't necessarily do it for enjoyment or passion. We do it for an outcome. So there's so many things that come into it. I love the conversations. I think it's great. I wish we would do that. Shaun will tell you, I'm a big proponent. I hate the all the conferences where all we talk about is tennis. I think we're all pretty good at tennis. We all have a pretty good. Let's talk about life. Let's talk about, as you said, what do you do? I'm notorious for playing music. And I always laugh that you can tell somebody when they went to high school because that's going to be their point of reference for what they play. So you come to my drill, you're going to get 70s and 80s. My kids that graduated, well, then you're getting the 90s. And thankfully, I don't let my high school kids pick the music because I don't consider what they have as music. So it's kind of stopped. But and they understand that perspective of me, and in perspective, and then and they deal with it. But like I said, I love the idea because it's the passion in that search for knowledge. And Murphy, Luke, and all ourselves aside, we're quoting Dr. King. His line was keep moving. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by God, just keep moving.
Right.
And that's what we need to do.
I love it. Maybe that heads us, Juan, toward mentorship programs. Maybe the leaders are not necessarily the ones that everybody's looking to. Maybe the leaders are the rest of us that can help mentor the next generation or even those around us that are our peers to make us better leaders.
Well, 100%. That's another one of my, I want to say like one of the chapters, one of the things I talked about I wrote about in the book, and it's about mentorship. Instead of micromanaging and telling people, oh, you got to do this better. You got to do it's what do you show them that they're probably uncertain what to do or how to do it because you haven't shown people. And another from a book I like to kind of quote on books that I read along the lines, and it was Shoe Dog from Phil Knight, the Nike story. It's tell him what to do and let him run with it. Let him run with it, right? Let them figure it out. And we were at a GPTCA conference or the workshop this past weekend, and Tony Nadal was talking about coaching Rafa, and he was like, Rafa, you have 4 shots to finish at the net. You have 5 shots to finish with a drop shot. You tell him what to do and let him run with it, right? So then you can make some suggestions, but you really, you really got to draw the mentor line. And one, you got to lead and coach, like Bobby was talking about, by example. Actions coach louder, speak louder, teach louder than the words. So sometimes you just got to go in and, do the do because, I don't have all these certifications or I haven't done all these things to collect in a trophy room. I want it for alignment. I want when I tell them, hey, why don't you go get pickleball certified? And they look at me like weird. I'm like, I got pickleball. I don't teach because I want you to teach. I want you to make that money. And what about paddle? Why don't you go get certified for paddle? Well, we don't have a court. Well, maybe I can get you a job at a club part time that you can go teach. Well, they look at me weird. I got certified already. You know what I mean? And I don't have a paddle court at the club. But I've put myself through these certifications or, learning tools so that when anybody asks, "Hey, what do you think of a paddle?" I'm not stuck. I know what I think because I went through the curriculum of Marcos Del Pilar, and I think it's amazing. The RSPA put a really good program to teach paddle for the RSPA instructors or bring new instructors. We're kind of running low on coaches in the future, right? And they put together these certifications that nobody wants to take advantage of or they don't know about. So what do? Point them in that direction. Well, again, I gotta say, I've already done it. I drew that, line to now it's your turn. So if I've done it, I'm not telling them you got to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to teach. I want you to, I did it. So what about an executive course? I could probably get you a head pro position somewhere else. No, I don't know. Let's go do CRSC. McMahon Careers could also position you somewhere in the industry, right? Well, have you done it? I did it. I did it in 2021. You know, so you tell me I haven't done all the certifications, but I've done the ones that I feel have improved my coaching, my executive decisions, my way of leading the club, the members, the mentorship, the mentoring of up and coming pros. And in the division, I think that they know I used to be, more of the technical guy because I was so focused on learning about the techniques and the evolution of movement and the evolution of footwork and the evolution of the forehand and the mechanics. And then all of a sudden they're like, what happened? And I'm like, I realized that that took me to a place where, I can teach you a forehand 5 different ways, but then I have to lead, now I got to teach the coaches how to be better coaches. And now I got to, help the board how to run the club better. So I've taken these steps in a direction that I feel have taken me to a place where I'm comfortable and I'm confident of mentoring or leading or being a guide of sorts for this up and coming generation.
Here we go, Bobby. We got our first mentor offer right there. We'll add him to the list. Bobby, you got anything else for Juan before I hit him with King of Tennis?
No, I've enjoyed it. Thank you, Juan.
All right.
Thank you.
So Juan, hopefully you put some thought into this and you know it's coming, but you may not know the scope. So when I ask the question, if you were king of tennis, whether it's the entire world, whether it's professional, country clubs, social play, juniors, anything, if you were king of tennis, is there anything you would do or change?
I would lower the barrier. I think that everybody has come up with something similar, but I would lower the barrier of entry for players to come in and have fun right away. I think other sports have done it. And I think that, in all honesty, we have a pilot program in San Diego for red color pathway for adults. A lot of the adults that already play tennis, they think it's almost like taking them backwards. Well, we're not going to take them backwards. We're going to bring new people. We're going to bring new players into our sport by showing them that it's easy to play, it's easy to have fun. It's it's like other sports that we know out there. And I'm going to mention straight up pickleball is a lower barrier of entry. And I think paddle is also a lower barrier of entry. And why not copy that? I don't think that copying or using those other sports as it doesn't make us any less or them any better. We're going to use these tools to bring new players and have fun right away. Throw music in there, whatever it is that they want to do to have fun, and they want to come back tomorrow. So that's if I was king of tennis, I'd probably go through a list of things. But the barrier of entry that I think that we can bring, we want growth and we want continuity of these players. They need to have fun and they need to feel accomplished on day one. And I think that lowering that protocol of being so rigid and you have to play with his ball and you have to play with his racket and you have to play with it's like lower that, be flexible. They want to hit the forehand with the what it's like, let them do it, let them figure it out. And then you start the connection that we talked about. I think we're going to go full circle with a lot of things that we talked about earlier. Once they're hooked, once they're connected to the sport, you can start shaping them a little bit, right? Don't let them get all these bad habits, but let them have fun, let them love the sport, and let them come to you and ask for, hey, how can I get better? Well, there's this next step, right? But I would do that. A lot of the coaching needs to be certified. I think that everybody's talked about. I really liked how Seth put it in. When you go to a financial advisor, they have to be a certified financial planner. I think if it was the U.S., I think USTA is taking that initiative to do the pathway for coaching. A friend of mine, we were hitting one of my 5-0 teammates. We were talking about, he's from the UK, and he's like, this is the conversation we were having about being certified and having everybody certified. And he's like, oh, the LTA has a really, really strong program and a strong protocol that everybody has to be certified. So then we can put the tools in play and we can make this entry a lot easier and a lot better for players to come in and enjoy it from day one.
But yeah, I think you'll appreciate this. My thought was the complaints, where of course the adult says, well, you're going to stick me over there with a little red ball like the kids, right? But are these not the same
Mm.
people that are willing to play cornhole? You'd think we could talk them into switching to a red ball.
But I think that's the why pickleball became so popular. It was an easier entry, but, there's so many things that, like I said, I always judge a good conversation by how many layers that we've unwrapped here, and there's just thousands, and it's what another idea that just popped in my head is, in a gratuitous way, tennis should position itself as an entry level because the kids are not the same anymore. They don't have gym class. There is nothing that they're doing, so everything they do is specialized. So when you get the 6-year-old kid who's taking tennis lessons, that doesn't mean the kid can walk and chew gum. And unfortunately, especially in America, they are usually the kids that can't walk and chew gum or not as well that you would see on a soccer field, a baseball field, a basketball court. So tennis is, that's something. So why don't we take the initiative and say, you know what, we're going to take all the kids. Because I used to do this when I would coach 5 and 6-year-olds. They knew for the first 25 minutes, they were not picking up a racket. They were going to do footwork. They were going to dance. We were going to catch. We were going to throw. Because Juan, you're a coach, and I don't know the answer to this. What is your judge of a good athlete? What is the first thing that you usually look to and say, okay, this person can do something? What does somebody do that catches your eye?
I think the movement, natural movement, the way they can start, run, stop, change direction.
See, I look at it I'm simpler. Throw.
Throwing. I knew Bobby was
If
going to
somebody can
throwing. Yep.
throw a ball, I'm interested right away. And it's movement because you're right. I mean, it is natural for us to throw underhand. So if somebody can, on balance, throw a ball, I'm excited. That immediately gives me, okay, we have something here. We can. There's hope here. So I mean, I think that's something that. And again, I think the way we judge it. Another great thing you said was, and somebody asked me, what do you do better than other coaches? My players come back. That's all. They have enough fun where they come back, whether it be the music. They'll all complain about my stories. They'll all complain about my warehouse of worthless information, but they still ask me questions to hear the worthless information. So, and that's kind of my brand. Okay, you're going to get a history lesson. You're going to learn about music. I am the MTV generation. So, yes, I know everything about every video from 1981 to 1985, but, that's part of my brand. And I sell that brand as this is something that brings us together. Now let's expand upon it because I think that's the hard part too. As you get older, unfortunately, the commonality is why there are no atheists in foxholes or your best friends are from your school days because there was commonality. As you grow older, you find out there were things that you weren't exactly alike, but you did have commonality. As we get older, we lose that commonality. Again, I think look at the tennis culture of Atlanta that provided an adult population a commonality. And look what it has done for tennis in Atlanta because it gave people something that they could talk about. And I think it's great. And, it's not all about rankings. Very few of us are going to win prize money. Let's have some fun. Let's get more people playing. If nothing else, we got the proof. You're going to live 9 years longer. Let's dangle that key. And whether it's because of the physical or the mental acuity that tennis requires, let's sell it. Let's sell it. Everybody knows we're going to die, but I don't want to do it tomorrow. So I want to hang out as long as I can.
Juan, it appears you struck a chord with Bobby. That's good. But guys, we are hitting the end here. We're up against it. I really appreciate the time. Bobby, as always, you're with me. I appreciate it. Juan, wonderful to see you again, at least on camera and hear your voice. And maybe one day we'll get to meet in person, but we appreciate your time as well. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much and look forward to connecting again soon.